ruin has come to our family. You remember our venerable house? Opulent and imperial, gazing proudly from its stoic perch above the moor.
Darkest Dungeon is out this week for PlayStation 4, a previously early access game that launched on PC first in 2016. Darkest Dungeon is a turn-based dungeon crawler with a new twist on status effects in the form of stress and psychological traits that carry over between excursions and must be relieved with various activities requiring a character to sit out and recoup. The game is very systems heavy with light story. The initial setup is a bored rich guy delving into ancient magics, which unlocks the Darkest Dungeon and unleashes otherworldly horrors on the surrounding area. These horrors are very Lovecraftian in the form of fish people, tentacles from beyond, madness-inducing cultists, and other grotesquerie with a wonderful art style of sharp edges and deep shadows that give everything a sinister look. The player is tasked with recruiting various class-based heroes, all of which have their own unique abilities, traits, and equipable items to tackle the Darkest Dungeon and 4 surrounding areas, each with their own environments, enemy types, and common stat debuffs. The somewhat permanent psychological traits build up for each hero to flesh out that character in a sea of randomness, making them memorable, but it's all the more terrible when they die. And heroes will die constantly. I've lost probably 60 and 50 hours, forcing the player to try and stay detached and constantly adapt to new teams. The heroes will return to a hometown, Hamlet, which is an upgradable home base that allows for improving weapons or armor, relieving stress, improving abilities, and more. The town itself can experience its own randomness in town events that may help or hinder the player in many ways. When a team is ready to embark, they'll have a set task to complete, whether it be unique bosses or just general exploration. While crawling through a randomized dungeon layout, the team will have to battle numerous monstrosities in a single file line, taking turns. Here's where tactical positioning comes in. Certain classes are more suited for certain positions based on their abilities, and same goes for enemies. For example, healers in the back, brawlers in the front, etc. Quests can vary in length between short, medium, and long. The medium and long length quests will require the team to bring firewood in order to break camp somewhere along the way and recoup their strength and sanity. Camping makes the adventure feel tangible, like everyone really would get tired and hungry crawling around in darkness swinging blades at monsters. Each class brings another set of abilities to camping as well, where they can tend wounds, play music, pray, and much more. This extra level of planning during a dungeon is a really nice touch. After almost 50 hours of playtime, I feel like I've barely made a dent in completing Darkest Dungeon. The highest level of heroes is 6, which the higher their level, the less likely they are to fall prey to psychological effects. Heroes at level 6 are theoretically ready to tackle the actual Darkest Dungeon, but I still struggled with level 5 standard quests, which brings up probably my biggest gripe with Darkest Dungeon. It hinders the player's freedom to grind. Heroes that are a level higher than a dungeon will actually refuse to embark on the quest, leaving the only options to higher level dungeons in order to gain experience. In theory, I'm okay with this, but often the randomness of Darkest Dungeon can really mess you up in ways that you don't expect nor prepare for. And I'm used to RPGs letting me break the game with grinding should I choose. This game is very tough, to say the least, and I like that, but there are plenty of times where I feel like I was starting from scratch because of my available hero levels. To date, I've only got 2 heroes to level 6. I've had plenty of 5s that end up dying to circumstances beyond my control, but I guess that's the nature of the game. Another major gripe I have is healing. There's only 2 classes that do any sort of real hard healing, with others having various abilities that either heal themselves or only a smaller percentage of another hero's HP. And since your available pool of heroes is random, sometimes you may not even have a good healer to take on quests. One might think this could be mitigated by healing items, of which there are none. The player must always bring food on a quest in case the heroes get hungry or for use during camp, and this restores HP, but very little that it's almost worthless outside of the random hungry event or for use in camping. So, with no one to heal, when a hero's HP drops to 0, they enter Death's Door, in which any subsequent hit has a 33% chance of killing them off for good. Should you happen to heal that character past the point of death, they now have a permanent debuff for the remainder of the quest. This feels almost too punishing in an already very difficult game, and should a character's stress level reach max, they'll have a heart attack and immediately drop to 0 HP. It's rough. Even with a dedicated true healer, it's hard to come back from 0. While this struggle is the point of the game, there's almost no boons in the player's favor, outside of the chance of virtue, a positive effect at high stress. My last major issue with the game is the tactical positioning aspect. I like how the developer managed to make a 2D plane still have that level of planning, but if a hero dies, and a character that relies on using abilities suited for the last position has to move forward, the ability requirements don't adjust for the new position with less than 4 heroes. It's another mechanic that rears its ugly head when the player is already beaten to a pulp, and there's nothing to do about it. There's only so much planning the player can do with limited resources. Ultimately, I love Darkest Dungeon. I've really enjoyed my time with it, even though I don't expect to ever finish the game. I'm the type of person who doesn't necessarily need to complete a game, especially if I've already got tons of playtime out of the gameplay alone, and this is a great example of that. The nature of the game, the constantly compounding gameplay systems driven by dice rolls, was always exciting to me. Even minor quests could result in utter disaster, and that dance with death never gets old. You'll quickly learn the ins and outs of each dungeon and see the same environments and enemies, but somehow the developer managed to get a lot of mileage out of them with the constant threat of danger. While I think there's 1 or 2 classes that are essentially worthless, the variability in your team and hero pool is really cool. I just wish the creators had gone 1 extra step in changing up how the class looks, whether it be armor or gender swaps, but it's a minor issue. Darkest Dungeon manages to pack a lot of content in a small package. It asks a lot of the player in managing numerous systems, but the simple task of completing a quest or just narrowly escaping a bad situation keeps the experience fresh, no matter how long one might choose to play.
It is a festering abomination. I beg you, return home, claim your birthright, and deliver our family from the ravenous, clutching shadows of the Darkest Dungeon.
Thank you for watching my review of Darkest Dungeon. I'm Nick, and I host my own podcast, 2v1 Podcast, on all podcast services that we post every Monday, where I just talk about video games with 2 of my best friends. Check it out. Thanks for watching again. Please subscribe, and enjoy Darkest Dungeon.